You're more like us than them. You don't belong with these people.
Welcome to Make a Path Presents. I'm Ronnie Hayes, and tonight let's talk about The Walking Dead. Especially, will DARYL join the Whisperers? I promise you that's not as ludicrous as it sounds. Now, before we begin, obviously there's TV show spoilers if you're not caught up with The Walking Dead up until this point, which is episode 8, or the end of episode 8 of season 9. And also, comic book spoilers. I will say I'm going to hold off on any main comic book spoilers for the most part. Until the very end, we're going to mention something, but I'm going to literally save that for the actual end. So if you don't want to know anything, you can skip out at that moment. But where does this come from? Two things. One, something that's said in the trailer. I'm going to try to play it before this video. Hopefully it doesn't get blocked. And two, and that's something that the new Whisper captive, Lydia, which is the Whisper leader's daughter, she says something to DARYL. I'm sorry, three things. And also something from the comic book and a part of the story they might remix and give a part of it to DARYL, which is a little iffy because it's fun what goes on in the comic, but it's also controversial. Maybe not controversial. It divided the fan base. Half of the fan base did like it. Half of the fan base thought, ooh, that was a bit rushed, sudden, jarring. Maybe they can correct that or fix that or do it differently on the show. And the third thing that leads into this, something we've already seen before. In a previous episode in season 9, Carol goes out looking for DARYL. She brings Henry there because she wants to bring him back to the hilltop, keep him with people instead of being out on his own, and he could keep an eye on Henry. There's a scene that appears to be a bonding scene between DARYL and Henry, but maybe they're going for a little bit more. We have the dog. Remember, the dog gets lost? And a couple comments, now that we look back, DARYL says, yeah, the dog checks the traps, he lets me know if there's any walkers, but he never got caught in one before. The dog has never got caught in a trap before. Now, again, it could just be a scene that was in there to kind of have DARYL and Henry have that buddy moment. Or it wasn't just the dog getting caught in a trap against random walkers. They could be Whisperers. Now, not the ones that were killed. Obviously, those were real walkers, but the Whisperers, what they would do is they'd send the walkers in there, and then they would watch, So that's kind of their MO. They use the walkers to do their dirty work, and they sit in the back and watch, and only attack or come out when it's necessary. This does connect to what Lydia's saying. How does Lydia know anything about DARYL? So he's a little bit grungy. I mean, is that it? Is that the only qualifications? Where is she getting this? You're more like us than them. Where is she getting that? Now, maybe she's getting that from what she saw once she was captive, being brought to the communities, and he was more shut down, more on the outs. You know what I mean? Maybe when they were camped out before they went back to the hilltop, DARYL was on his own or camped by himself. I don't know. I feel like that's a bit of a stretch. So maybe, possibly, the Whisperers, including Lydia's group, were watching DARYL. They've been watching him. We saw him hunting, and again, that was to show DARYL what he was doing when Carol ran into him. But maybe it's also to show more, to clue him into the Whisperers were watching him. Now, keep in mind, the Whisperers are territorial. That's what this is about. When he stabbed Jesus, the one Whisperer said, "You are where you do not belong." There are a lot of things, but they also recruit. They also bring in members. In the comic, later on, once the Whisperers got brutally beaten by our heroes, not defeated, but beaten in a big way, they were still recruiting. They were bringing in newer people, yada, yada, yada. I won't get into specifics, but we know they don't just have this one core group and that's it. No, they bring people in. What type of people? People who are by themselves, people who are a little bit touched and out in the wilderness and they haven't run across anybody and they think this is how you live now. I mean, in this tribe of people, it's real messed up, but they do recruit people. They do bring people in. So it's not a leap to look at DARYL and think, well, he's a perfect candidate for the Whisperers. What does he have that's similar? Remember what I said before? Daryl had the skins, the animal skins hanging up. The Whispers, now that the cat's out of the bag, they wear zombie skins. Now what they do is they get the skins, they cure them, they skin the zombies, or, bodies, whatever, and they hang the skins up, they cure them, and then they weave them into wearable outfits, wearable suits, and then that keeps them camouflaged in the scent of all the other zombies as long as they whisper and they don't cause an alarm or bring too much attention to themselves and get the attention of other walkers. They can live among them and control the herd. It's freaking epic in a twisted villain type of way. They see Daryl on his own, away from people, shut off. He does his own thing, grimy, gringy. He's a perfect fit in their eyes, probably looking at him, or at least a decent fit. Now, something that happens in the comic, and here's where we're going to get into some comic spoilers. In the comic, it's Negan once he escapes. He goes to be with the Whispers. They try to chase him down, and this syncs up with what happened in the show. In the comic, it was Aaron who got stabbed by Beta, not a random Whisperer, but by Beta. And he stabbed Aaron. He said, "You guys don't belong here. We warned you guys." And they're like, "No, we're here for Negan. He's a prisoner." Whoop-de-whoop. So Aaron ended up living. That was just a stab that was, it was brutal, you know what I mean? But he survived from it, and they ended up leaving. Negan ended up staying there, and he lived there. He hunted with them. He said he wanted to get in with the group, and he was still Negan in his way. But I think maybe they are going to remix a part of that with Daryl on the show. If they want to kind of pull Daryl in, this is where I'm mixed. Because there's a part of me that thinks, okay, they have that lined up where they can take that route. Comic book fans know what I'm talking about. Daryl can go on the inside. Now, he's not going to officially become a Whisperer, but he sees, one of these days, I'll remember the shut off, that damn air freshener. But anyway, he infiltrates them, essentially. And then he tries to attack from the inside. That's something that Negan does, again, without going into the details. But Negan infiltrates them, tries to attack from the inside. It doesn't quite go as planned. However, he does deliver a pretty solid blow. Now, I'll save the one Negan moment for the very end, but reeling this back, it's likely that they'll have a Negan remix where it's Negan doing his Negan storyline on the show. But it's also possible they might remix some of that with Daryl. It's lining up that it could be. If you think it could be, the hints and clues are there. It's possible. Daryl could, in some way, give it a shot, see that these people are dangerous, see that these people are a threat, and this is or would be after they received the first initial attack. They're attacked, a bunch of people are killed, and Daryl thinks, we need information, we know nothing about their numbers, who they are, what they are, and Lydia and some of the reveals that the Whisperers took a liking to him and thought he was a candidate to incorporate in their group. As what she said in the trailer, you're more like us than them. So he decides to go into their group, infiltrate it, and then attack. Now, where it kind of steals the fun is how Negan does the attack. If you do it in the show with Daryl instead of Negan, it doesn't have that same type of impact. And this is where we're going to get into the heavy spoiler for a main villain death. If you don't want to hear anything in the comic, I have a strong feeling that they might be remixing this in a different way. Because if they do this like the comic, then the big mighty villain leader is going to be dead soon. Probably by the end of this season. Again, unless the pacing is really drawn out. That means one of the main villains, is going to die this season. I don't know about that. Go ahead and read the storyline again. It happens quick. It happens really quick. Maybe that's just how it reads, but it feels like the build-up for some reason is slow. But then when everything kicks off, it's kind of like the leader's dead instantly, and it's like, wait, what? So again, we're going into the comic book spoilers. If you don't want to know, I'll make this quick. But in the comic book, Negan infiltrates and then abruptly kills the leader. He's only there for like a day, 2 days. And he kills the leader when they're talking away from the group, cuts her head off. It is a pretty epic scene, I'll admit. And in the comic review, I remembered saying that would be badass if there was more time with the leader and then Negan did that. Like if we had a few more issues of the leader doing badass shit and then Negan did that. and that is what kicked off the Whisperer War, I think I would have loved it even more. And it was a pretty badass moment. I mean, it was brutal. In the show, if DARYL does that moment, it just loses that umph. But if Negan still does that moment, I think it actually fits good, looking at how Father Gabriel's trying to domesticate Negan, bring the good out of him. And imagine Negan, instead of him being on his knees with the decapitated head of the villain leader, instead of him being like, wait till Rick gets a look at you, or whatever he says, he's like, wait till Gabriel, and looks at you. It's funny. I think it's funnier, I feel, with Gabriel, because he's trying to bring the good out in Negan. Negan's like, oh my god, this is so good. I just literally cut the head off of the new villains. And Gabriel's going to look at it like you chopped the head off of a woman. So it has that funny, wait till Gabriel gets a look at you, but then Gabriel's looking at him like, you psychopath. That's not what I meant. And Negan's going to be like, what do you mean? I did this for y'all. She killed how many of your people? You know what I mean? Because their views on things won't be lining up in that case. So I think it does work with Gabriel, and it does have a little bit of humor in. But like I said, I do hope they remix it, instead of the comic being a real abrupt ending for the Alpha character. It does work that Alpha would get killed off. Beta would be in such a rage because he did have a liking for Alpha. He, swore to follow her, never betray her, whoop-de-whoop. He had a thing for Alpha in that way. And for that death to send him over the edge and say, we're going to wipe them out, borders or not, we're wiping them out. That aspect does work. But I'm just hoping for some type of tweak, because I just feel like it's too soon, man. But you guys let me know. Thoughts and opinions down in that comment box. Again, I think it is a stretch, but there's a possibility DARYL could get some of that remixed story. Maybe not all. He could get some. It could be DARYL and Negan both. I mean, that would be kind of weird. Imagine DARYL goes to infiltrate them, and then Negan, maybe DARYL doesn't even know he escaped, and then Negan escaping decides to go. But then how does he find out about them? How does he hear about them? You got Father Gabriel. They didn't even find out about them yet. So, yeah, you know what? We're going to revisit this with Negan, because in the current setup, Negan's storyline isn't even matching what would be needed to put him there with the Whispers. He doesn't even know anything about them yet. So that's even more ammo for the theory that it's DARYL and not Negan. So you guys give me your thoughts and opinions down below. And don't forget, keep an eye out for any hints or conversations about the Whispers watching DARYL, because it seems like that was a pretty sketchy, suspect scene about the line about the dog never getting caught before in the traps and yada, yada, yada. It just seems a little odd. It seems like there's more there than just bonding between DARYL and Henry. All right, thoughts and opinions down in that comment box. I'm done talking. It's your turn.